We have this unprecedented coup attempt against the president, and I know everyone else calls it impeachment. And I'll tell you once, and I'll tell you again, that when you think about impeachment, whenever you hear the word impeachment, you should substitute the word coup. Because to call it impeachment suggests lawfulness, suggests constitutionality, suggests a respect for the rule of law, suggests a protection of the rights of those involved. This has nothing to do with that. This is an exercise in raw political power by Nancy Pelosi and people like Adam Schiff to overthrow the President of the United States. Remember how this all began. You had this illicit communication between the leaker and Adam Schiff. And it certainly almost certainly included the conveyance of classified information contrary to law. Because, and if you've been following this, you will see that this guy is not, or gal, is not a whistleblower in the sense that the whistleblower law covered his conduct. Whistleblower law does not allow him to communicate with Congress directly as he did. He just can't bypass all the structures in place in the intelligence community that provide for actual whistleblowing to share classified or sensitive information with members of Congress. He can't do that. And you know how I know they know it was wrong? Because Adam Schiff lied about it. He was asked specifically, did you communicate? Did you communicate with the whistleblower? And he said, no, we did not. In fact, he did. His staff communicated with him. He was briefed on what happened, and certainly his tweets between the time he heard about it and the time the complaint became public suggest that he knew all about it. Why would he lie? He could have said, yeah, he did talk to me. He tried to tell me what happened. I said, stop, you can't tell me this. If you want to pursue it, go to the Inspector General's office. Get yourself a lawyer, file a complaint. But rather than be forthcoming, he lied and certainly misled his colleagues and the American people about his role in this plot. So we have this corruptly formed, and as I'll point out, corruptly followed impeachment effort against President Trump. This is an abuse of power that is unparalleled in American history. There's been 3 prior presidential impeachments. What they're doing with Trump fits none of them in terms of having a full House vote authorizing the inquiry and providing certain due process rights to the targeted president. Now, the response from the House is, well, they can do whatever they want. Well, I don't think that to be the case, but that's the response from the House. They can do whatever they want. The Constitution doesn't require the president gets a lawyer. The Constitution doesn't require the president's able to confront witnesses against him. The Constitution doesn't require any of that. That's their argument. From the civil libertarian left, that is their argument. And I'm glad the White House counsel, Pat Cipollone, pushed back because the administration said, we're not going to play in this coup. We're not going to play along with this coup. We're not going to participate in this attack on the president as long as the basic structures and due process rights available to any other U.S. citizen are not in place. Now, the media would have you believe this was just a political document. Well, of course, it's a political process. So the letter by the lawyer makes political points. But I want to highlight the substantive points by the White House here. And I don't do that often, that I read a White House document like this, but I do it because it highlights the constitutional concerns quite ably here, and you won't hear about it anywhere else. If you want to find out what the legal issues are here, good luck finding it. Look at it. I want you to do an exercise. Go ahead and try to find out information about what the text of this document. See how the newspapers and the news organizations describe it. The pro-coup newspapers and news organizations trying to take out the president. See how they describe it. You won't find out any of this, but for independent folks like Judicial Watch. So he writes on behalf of the United States, rejecting the legally unsupported demands made as part of what you have labeled contrary to the Constitution of the United States and all past bipartisan precedent as, quote, an impeachment inquiry. And The letter's written to Nancy Pelosi, Eliot Engel, who's chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, Adam Schiff, the corrupt head of the Intelligence Committee, and Elijah Cummings, chairman of the Oversight and Reform Committee. As you know, you have designed and implemented your inquiry in a manner that violates fundamental fairness and constitutionally mandated due process. For example, and I want you to listen to this carefully, you have denied the president the right to cross-examine witnesses, to call witnesses, to receive transcripts of testimony, to have access to evidence, to have counsel present, and many other basic rights guaranteed to all Americans. You have conducted your proceedings in secret. You have violated civil liberties and the separation of powers by threatening executive branch officials, claiming they will seek to punish those who exercise fundamental constitutional rights and prerogatives. All of this violates the Constitution, the rule of law, and with emphasis in the document, every past precedent. Never before in our history has the House of Representatives, under the control of either political party, taken the American people down the dangerous path you have seemed determined to pursue. And then later, here, House leadership claims to have initiated the gravest interbranch conflict contemplated under our Constitution by means of nothing more than a press conference at which the Speaker of the House simply announced an official impeachment inquiry. Your contrived process is unprecedented in the history of the nation and lacks the necessary authorization for a valid impeachment proceeding. The Supreme Court has recognized that due process protections apply to all congressional investigations. Indeed, it has been recognized that the Due Process Clause applies to impeachment proceedings, and precedent for the rights to cross-examine witnesses, call witnesses, and present evidence dates back nearly 150 years. To comply with the Constitution's demands, appropriate procedures would include, at a minimum, the right to see all evidence, to present evidence, to call witnesses, to have counsel present at all hearings, to cross-examine all witnesses, to make objections relating to the examination of witnesses or the admissibility of testimony and evidence, and to respond to evidence and testimony. Likewise, the committees must provide for the disclosure of all evidence favorable to the president and all evidence bearing on the credibility of witnesses called to testify in the inquiry. The committee's current procedures provide none of these basic constitutional rights. This is the constitutional crisis I've been telling you. The fact that none of these basic forms and norms are being followed by the House Democrats highlights the coup-like nature of what they're doing. They want to move with speed, which is what a coup requires, secrecy, which is what a coup requires, and lack of respect for the rule of law and the civil rights of those they're targeting. Impeachment is a constitutional process, and as such, the Constitution can't be, other parts of the Constitution don't get cast aside. It doesn't overrule the due process rights due to a president or witnesses. The left point of view is, you object to this? Well, your objection is proof of guilt, and we're going to impeach you for it. That's what they're saying in response to the president's objections to this unlawful process. If they're so confident, the left is, about their efforts to remove the president, why don't they follow regular procedure? Why don't they issue an impeachment inquiry that affords a process that protects everyone involved? They don't want to do that. They still are considering, for instance, having this anonymous leaker remain anonymous, while at the same time bringing in witnesses to be questioned under oath and potentially face jail as they try to figure out who this secret person is that's raising allegations against them. About material that's already out public, meaning the transcript of the phone call between the president and the president of Ukraine that supposedly has generated all this. And of course, if you've been following Judicial Watch, you'll recognize that this lawlessness is just the norm when it comes to attacking this president. They spied on him illegally. They concocted this scam and scheme and ambush and entrapment to get this special counsel appointed to harass him for 2 years over nothing, because remember, they knew there was no collusion. Yet they allowed this harassment to continue and victimize the president and everyone around him. So that didn't work out the way they wanted politically. So they concocted this Ukraine scam, which, not coincidentally, has had the effect of freezing any criminal investigations into Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, and as famously with Ukraine, Joe Biden. And of course themselves, for their involvement in the illegal spying and targeting of candidate Trump, President-elect Trump, and President Trump. That's what this is about. And they're willing to tear up the Constitution to protect themselves, tear up the Constitution to maintain or obtain power. So when you hear anything about these court fights and the Democrats saying they want evidence, they don't want evidence. This is the Alice in Wonderland approach to impeachment. Verdict first, evidence never. To suggest they want evidence suggests that there's a judicial process of some type going on. This is the furthest thing possible from a judicial process. I recognize it's a political operation in the sense you have the legislative branch and politicians running it. But if they want the power of law to compel cooperation, that law protects not only their rights to compel cooperation, but the rights of those they seek information from. And the corruption they're protecting, it's just getting worse and worse the more we learn about it. For instance, it just was disclosed to us, and others have been talking about it in the media, and I'm going to read the tweet I put out on it. If you're not following my Twitter feed, at Tom Fitton or Judicial Watch's Twitter feed, you miss a lot of information. So the tweet I wrote is Judicial Watch investigating allegations U.S. Embassy in Ukraine at direction of Obama holdover Ambassador Yukhanovich was monitoring, contrary to U.S. law, social and other media statements on, quote, Biden and, quote, Soros, among other terms, by real Donald Trump, President Trump's family and allies. Did you hear that? You had an Obama holdover misusing government resources to monitor the public statements and social media activities of people close to Trump on the specific issue of Biden and Soros. I'm not the only one who knows about this. Judicial Watch isn't the only one who knows about this. Tells you what they were worried about, doesn't it? Because you have to remember you had the Soros operation involved in Ukraine as well. And they were trying to protect them from any serious investigation over there, it looks like. Why were they going against the law to monitor Trump world? This is FISA-gate Part 2. Illegal spying on American citizens by an Obama holdover in Ukraine. Obviously concerned that the whole scam to protect Biden and Soros was going to be exposed. So we filed a Freedom of Information Act request because you can bet Congress isn't going to ask the documents for documents like this. Supposedly this ambassador may testify. I don't know if she will now. Given the president's objections, he ain't cooperating with this coup attack. He's not going to participate in his own hanging, so to speak. And we're not giving up on Biden. You know, the Congress wants to pretend the Biden scandal doesn't exist. The media wants to pretend the Biden scandal doesn't exist. Even as more evidence comes forward virtually every day that, yes, the Ukrainians were directed by the administration in every which way to shut down any investigation into the company associated with Hunter Biden. We've already filed a lawsuit against the State Department about the firing of that prosecutor, the firing that took place at the request specifically of of Joe Biden. Oh yeah, he did admit that Barack Obama knew about it. Remember, the prosecutor was fired under threat of losing $1 billion in aid, which is exactly the specific corruption they accuse of Trump doing, which he didn't do. Biden literally admits to. So we've asked for documents on that. But we also expanded our investigation this week with 2 new federal lawsuits under the Freedom of Information Act, seeking information about how the Committee on Foreign, let me make sure I'm getting the name of the government bureaucracy, the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States. So presumably the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States is a committee of government officials, senior cabinet level officials, who are supposed to evaluate transactions involving foreign investment in the U.S. in order to determine the effect of such transactions on the national security of the United States. They're supposed to protect us from, quote, foreign investment that is under the guise of foreign governments or their fronts that would harm our national security. You may remember this agency came up, or this committee came up, over the Uranium One scandal, where the allegation was that hundreds of millions or tens of millions, whatever the number was funneled into the Clinton machine by the Russians, I think through Ukraine as well, to guarantee a good result for the Uranium One purchase that resulted in Russia effectively gaining access to a significant portion of our uranium production. So we wanted to know if the 2 companies associated with Hunter Biden, Ukraine's Burisma Holdings and China's Bohai Harvest, RST, BHR, underwent this review by the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States. We asked for the documents. They gave us the runaround. They refused to respond, so we had to sue. Now, why is it we have reason to believe this committee would have evaluated this? Because both companies were involved in deals that potentially impacted our national security. For instance, in 2015, the Hunter Biden Chinese company participated in a $600 million buyout of Michigan automotive suspension systems maker Henniges Automotive. Now, they produce anti-vibration technologies that have military application. And then, of course, he also joined Burisma Holdings, which was one of Ukraine's largest natural gas companies, paid who knows how much money per month. It seems to be increasing from now it was 50, then it was 90. No board member gets paid that type of money, guys. You know that. It's necessarily corrupt, the amount of money. It's just a matter of figuring out what was expected in exchange for the exorbitant money. It's kind of like Clinton speaking fees. No normal ex-president regularly gets $500,000 to give a 20-minute speech. So you got to look to see what were they expecting in exchange for that $500,000. Same goes with Burisma Holdings. So they were involved in the United States business as well. Because of the energy, because of the gas, the natural gas business, and how its impact here in the United States. And the fact that they refuse to answer our questions suggests that they have something to hide in the deep state there. The Commerce Department recently barred over 24 Chinese companies from doing business in the United States, one of which is also reported to be a company that had investments or a stake owned by the Biden Chinese company, BHR Holdings Partners. They were developing facial recognition technology, which, as you know, is a sensitive topic with the Chinese now. So now that's 3 lawsuits Judicial Watch has filed to get information about what Joe Biden's up to. That scandal obviously isn't going to be investigated by his friends in the Democratic Party running the House now. It's actually all this coup activity is designed to protect him from any serious investigation there. So it's Judicial Watch that needs to come in and do the heavy lifting on this basic major scandal.
Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel to catch all the latest news from Judicial Watch.